Scene one, roll one, scene one, take one. Jacquie, promos?
I started with Jacquie Jordan Inc. a decade and a half ago. Then we went to TVGuestpert, and now we are Front and Center Podcast. So where are we going in 2020 with pop culture? Well, in order to answer that question, we need to talk about what happened in the last decade. In the last year, we've had many reunion shows. We've had Will and Grace, we had Friends, we had 90210 with the deceased Luke Perry right before that started. We also saw the return of Mad About You with Paul Reiser and Helen Hunt, and we watched Roseanne Barr get barred from her own show, which was quite a surprise and abrupt and controversial in the moment that it happened. So there was a lot of end-of-decade storytelling in our television shows. We also watched the media really change, especially in the last decade. We saw digital media platforms step up while we watched syndicated broadcast television shows take a step back. We ended the year with Disney TV competing with Apple TV. Apple TV took to their big show, the morning show, which had some brand confusion because literally when they announced the show and said that Jennifer Aniston, Reese Witherspoon, and Steve Carell were going to be headlining a morning show, many of us actually thought it was going to be a real morning show, which would have been far more interesting, at least in my opinion, than what we actually had, which was a scripted series about a morning show. And quite frankly, I don't know who they market tested that to, but the morning shows that we already have are interesting enough. But Disney got it right, if you can imagine that, with The Mandalorian and taking the entire Disney franchise, leading right up into the release of the most recent Disney movie, The Rise of Skywalker, which I haven't seen yet, but I'm actually interested in considering the last several Disney movies. The other thing that I think has happened over the last decade, especially that affects us as content makers, content creators, is the tech industry has really taken over. If I were to quantify what happened in the last decade, I would simply say that we went from life outside of our cell phones to life inside of our cell phones, where we can order anything instantly, from groceries to car service to packages delivered within 24 hours to our doorstep. And we've become citizen journalists with our cell phones and our iPhones and our smartphones. And we can even drive our cars now with our smartphones. And the smartphone has only been around for 12 years, so it happened at the end of the last decade, and it has changed entirely the content, the accessibility, the way we live, the way we function, the way we storytell. We operate our homes off of smartphones as well, turning on and off appliances. And Rosie, I always think of the Jetsons. Everything in the Jetsons has come true for those of us who remember the Jetsons. With the advent of the smartphone. But that's where content and storytelling has taken shape, taken form, and citizen journalism has become the way that we actually storytell. In reviewing this last year and looking at the last decade, I looked at it from the perspective of storytelling and from the images that we all post. And one of the things that I get to witness is how our world has become a lot smaller, and how, because of our accessibility to smartphones, countries and places that have been slower to the current technology that we experience here in our culture and our country have made it accessible across the world and very interconnected. Everything's instantaneous, and there is no waiting time or deferred time in that. And I think things are going to speed up and get a lot faster. And with that, it's going to be interesting to see who holds the responsibility in that, because there is going to be no delay to the consequence of such instantaneous, whether it's ordering something or saying something. And we've already seen that in the last couple years, how devastatingly consequential, things that people think and say immediately have, not only for themselves, but also on the culture as a whole. So I think we're going to be looking at a lot of that type of change and consequence in the next decade. And as a result of that, I would even add to it and say that it has forced truth behind things to come forward, because things can't stay hidden from the delay that we used to experience, and because of the instantaneous of connection, connectivity, communication, and connection, nothing can stay hidden that is deceptive, manipulative, or not in the highest good for all concerned. And so I think that's going to be something we're going to be experiencing more, and we're going to see that as content makers, especially in the collective in the next decade, really taking shape. In this last decade, I think we saw the riches and the spoils of the tail end of the reality show genre of Survivor and Amazing Race, and I think they're on their way out, because I think the reality shows are going to be moving towards the iPhone, and I think there's going to be more slash reality show slash video game integration, and even bringing the experts into the conversation or the participation of it. And I think we're going to be experiencing TV. TV is going to stick with more micro content, in my opinion. We're really going to get very specific about types of reality genres, not such big, broad, general, sweeping reality show stories. It's going to be those. I think are going to move more towards the iPhone way of doing television and reality show competitions. Also in this decade, we saw a lot of King's men go down like a fire through the Me Too movement. We saw Bill Cosby, Charlie Rose, Roger Ailes, Matt Lauer, Harvey Weinstein. It was Les Moonves. It was a time period of a lot of King's men being taken down for the same reason. And again, we are all collectively demanding truth, integrity, and transparency from all of our leaders. What would I like to see in 2020 in the television industry, in the film industry? I would like to see more content creators be able to participate successfully in getting their messages and their voice out and seen and heard in the world on a larger scale. What would I like to see in 2020 in the television industry, in the film industry? I would like to see more content creators be able to participate successfully in getting their messages and their voice out and seen and heard in the world on a larger scale. Check our podcast out, Front and Center with Jacquie Jordan, at frontandcenterpodcast.com. Find us on YouTube. Subscribe, like, or comment.
Well, the answers are all around you, but you gotta take the time.